Hi everyone, today is Friday, October 5, and today's video is actually going to be about deconstructing tokenism. You know, I was eating something and I bit the side of my tongue, so I may look like I have a little bit of a lisp, but I hope that you do understand what I'm trying to say. I always share these videos about all different kinds of stuff related to environmental justice and USA black feminism. Now, one of the things that I've actually been pondering on is this thing called tokenism. Personally, I don't see myself as a fucking puppet, and I don't see myself as being qualified according to this puppetization. And I was reading this piece, and I mentioned it in another video, about the problem with quotas and these diversity targets. And in the location that I am, in the global economic north, starting from this one province, and then we can go through all the provinces and then we can look at other places, is they have this sales pitch that they basically put out to the world to say this place is a diversity heartland, and you know there's all this opportunity and whatever. It sounds very nice, but you know when you see like toilets on the sidewalk, you see like the constant processing of black cadavers in these justice centers, I'll call them. There's other names for them as well. You know, it brings up a lot of questions around diversity, opportunity, fairness, inequality. What exactly is this? And so I came across this really nice piece in the Financial Post magazine, and it's connected with some newspaper in Canada. And this particular piece was actually written by Susan Winthrop. And the title of the piece is, you know what, I have Fairness Matters. And that's just the shortened version of the title. And basically this article problematizes the notion of hiring people into sort of decision making, I guess, is what probably some people would call it, decision making positions. And my position on that position is that, first of all, everybody makes decisions. So I think it comes down to accountability and getting into roles that have different kinds of accountability, and everybody should be accountable for everything they do. So basically, this article says that, you know, we have to question this thing called diversity through targets and quotas, because what you're also doing is you're also minimizing the ability to connect with the creativity of the person. So how do you actually make sense of all this? And you know, it was really interesting to hear even from a position from the European Union to say that, you know what, these quota things are just not effective, because what it does is it actually, again, promotes this notion that, you know, you can have like special arrangements, let's say. And the reason why I'm sort of reflecting here is because for me, being in, for example, different demographics or whatever, right? This one particular one, when you come from, let's say, a white-centric heartland, where you see, all this KKK nonsense, to another version of a heartland, and you see the diversity being sort of the majority. It's nice to see that. I'm like, it's nice to see, but you have to go beyond what you see, because quite frankly, just because something looks like diversity is not to say that it's, even better than, for example, the things that created something called institutionalizing the supremacy of whiteness. So in this particular demographic, you see a lot of things related to, you see women of color, and you see I don't know, some kind of orientation. You see a range of stuff, which is very nice. But what exactly are they doing to set better social norms? How do they identify with problems? How do they actually mitigate solutions? How do they actually engage the entire public in, for example, decision making and remuneration? So even though you see sort of this deposit, let's say, of diversity, you see a lot of poverty. Toilets on the sidewalks. You see poverty very diverse. You see all kinds of non-white. So that says something about the problem with a lot of things related to infrastructure and a lot of things related to this thing called the supremacy of whiteness. And USA Black Feminism talks about this stuff. It says, okay, we have to contextualize this problem. Where did this stuff come from? Okay, we look at this angle. And then we have to say, okay, you know what? Now we see how this problem exists. How do we actually dissolve it? And we have to dissolve it because it's perpetuating a lot of the things that actually marginalize communities. So there's different angles. For example, there's different models that can be applied. There's different positions. There's even different orchestrations or articulations of ways to take different positions. But you know what? It also encourages you, Black feminism from the USA, to contribute your perspective. So for example, Patricia Hill Collins talks about this matrix of domination. Come up with your version of a matrix of domination, solutions-based model, from a problem-based model. Something like that, right? And these things have to be factored when it comes to this idea around deconstructing tokenism, because tokenism is not, it's not effective. It can be very violent because, for example, I even shared this example of this this one case where there was a woman of color that was hired into the police force, and of course they're trying to meet their quotas or whatever. And not to bash peace officer services, because we're all peace officers, and we all have special ability even to arrest police. And they basically hire this person to deal with a situation of trust, I guess. And I don't like to sort of say that there's more trust in one area than the next, but when you're actually dealing with access to some kind of infrastructure, and when you're dealing with opportunities, you have to be very careful what you do. Because, for example, this woman of color was hired as Punjabi background, and just basically tampered with these samples. But the implications of that led to further dehumanization of entire groups entire like populations, entire families, that's problematic. But on the other hand, this Punjabi was actually operating in an infrastructure that was built on something called the supremacy of whiteness. So how do you actually mitigate problems like this, right? This piece by Susan Winthrop basically says, you know what, you have to actually look at fairness, you have to look at equality, and you also have to look at, there's a little piece in there about justice, just a little tiny piece. And you have to actually look at, for example, these notions now to say no to tokenism. But on the other hand, it's very good to have like these, I guess, numbers, but you also have to question the methods behind these numbers. Because you don't know what kinds of questions are being asked to come up with these numbers. You don't know if, for example, a survey of 5 people that are disconnected from reality has been applied to, let's say, half of the planet. So you have to question these numbers as well. But basically, the issue that the article is exploring is the idea of equality. What is this thing called equality? If we have issues of tokenism, if we have issues of special arrangements, I mean, there has to be considerations, of course. But how do you actually mitigate this thing called diversity? Me personally, you should see diversity throughout. You should see the whole world throughout. But I've realized as well that you have to go beyond what you see, right? You have to go, okay, what's being operationalized? Like, for example, there's, what is it called? Municipal level of police services in a particular province. They have like different levels, whatever, of peace officer services. It's all Caucasian. Now, how is that representing the global diversity? Because regionally, for example, there's more than just Caucasian. And then you go into other areas where you see, for example, non-white communities. But they actually have different positions, and they actually perform violence against communities that are not maybe of the same, I don't know, some kind of cultural orientation as them. So you have situations such as, for example, this, I say dirty Punjabi, that constructed all these things about including the black community. The jails are not filled up with the Punjabi community, they're filled up with the black community. So what is this person doing? On the other hand, there's additional questions, right? And this is certainly not to be sympathetic to what clearly is bullshit. You got to learn how to deconstruct this thing called tokenism. It is not nice at all for some people that think, hey, I want to get a job. I'm going to just put on there that I've got polka dots or whatever. I mean, that's nice, but how do you actually operationalize solutions towards a certain problem? Are you going to create shit in the work environment? Or to that person that thinks, well, I got my whatever, privilege, well, the same question applies to them too. Because you're not going to get special treatment. Because what, these numbers say something? Nobody has even looked at these numbers and said, hey, all these people that have these numbers are the ones that are creating poverty. So things are changing. Question this thing called tokenism. Take a reading of this article. It's actually, it's interesting. It's a very interesting article because it problematizes this thing called equality and diversity. What exactly is equality then? And then the other question is, well, what exactly is diversity? People say no to tokenism. That stuff ain't cool. It isn't cool at all. And just think about how you want to leave a legacy, let's say for the next 25 generations. Culturally, that's how we think and that's how we plan. Right? We're going to build infrastructures that will regenerate for the next 25 generations towards decolonization. Read some black feminism from the United States to begin with. It talks about stuff like this. If you're scared of black feminism, then you know what? You can just read it in secret. I can't do the readings for you, and I won't do the readings for you. Because you got to pull your sack of potatoes as well. Pick up a black feminist text and just read it. Something called Black Feminist Epistemologies. Fabulous stuff. Fabulous. You can deconstruct anything. Anything. And it is interesting how even you have problems around tokenism. Just take some time to deconstruct this thing called tokenism. I'm looking at this cue card, and I've got this piece of paper with some notes. But you know what? I don't like reading off notes. I just like to read the notes and then articulate positions. You know, I was just looking at this example of a province in Canada where what they call it's called a premier, and basically the person goes through a governance process and then gets elected into this position. So this one premier in Quebec in 2006 brought in this legislation to say that more women need to be promoted. But how many of those women are decolonized? Are they these things that actually promote the same thing that taught the white male to lynch the black male and the black female and the black family? You gotta question things like this, right? Because it's ridiculous. You see another diversity person, I'd be like, hey, that's great, you know? I don't see my people from my community as a diversity person. It's like when you see like a pack of, let's say a pack of horses, right? They'll all walk together, you know, some of them will get into, you know, their little fights or whatever, but they all sort of walk together. Well, it's the same thing. They don't see each other as, oh, you know, there's a diversity horse over there, you know, there's the other horse over there, but they all sort of walk together. It's the same thing. What exactly is this thing called diversity? But what exactly is this thing called equality? What exactly is this thing called the supremacy of institutionalized whiteness and internalization of that? Look at this Punjabi person. Fucking 60,000 urine samples? I was like, what the hell? At some point you gotta stop. You just keep on going and going and going and going. That's like, you know, mass murder. How many of those people have been destroyed? Diversity is not a nice thing at times. What the solution is to look at the gift in a person. If you cannot see the gift in a person, then you know what? You need to work on stuff related to yourself. You have to see the gifts in every person. There's something called Four Directions teachings. Caring, sharing, honesty, respect. If you don't even know that, for example, sharing is common sense. Something is fucking wrong with you. What you have to do? Go pick up some black feminism from the United States and read this stuff. They have these, like, diversity campaigns, and I'm just like, what the hell is this? I'm not a fucking token, right? Don't use me on your diversity pictures, because it'll ask for the balance sheet. Balance. Be respectful to people. Diversity, in some ways, I see the notion of fairness, but when you have, like I said, the puppets that are reproducing colonization, that's not good. Take a look at this piece, and you know what, thanks for watching. I'd certainly like to hear your thoughts on tokenism. What exactly are your views on tokenism, and how are you actually deconstructing that? And why? Thanks for watching.